another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. Our first guest for tonight's show is Tara Babcock. Tara, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tara, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I'm 31 years old. I'm married, mother of two, anthropology student working on my bachelor's degree. I have a background in folklore, too, so I'm not like a complete nutcase. I live in Idaho, Pocatello, Idaho, to be exact, but I was born and raised in Wyoming, and that's where the story that I'm going to tell today takes place.
The encounter that you're about to talk about, that's not one that you personally experienced. Please tell us about how you came to find out about this encounter.
When I was about 18, my first roommate that I ever had was a guy named Jim. He was a few years older than me. He had graduated school probably, I think, 3 or 4 years ahead of me, so he was a bit older. And we roomed together for about 6 months. He's a really, really nice guy, very interesting guy. But one night we were up talking late. The conversation turned towards paranormal experiences. I'm a lifelong paranormal enthusiast, and he also was very interested in that stuff. And we started talking about encounters that we'd had. And he told me this story about he and his friends. And it freaked me out pretty good.
Oh, I can understand why after finding out about all the details on what happened. That's easy to understand. Now, when did Jim's encounter actually happen?
He didn't tell me the year exactly, but I know that it was the year that he graduated high school, which would have been about 92 or 93.
Around 92 or 93. Yeah, that was when the whole Beast of Bray Road thing was kind of winding down. When did you find out about this encounter from Jim?
He told me about this, I believe it was 1999.
If you don't mind, please go ahead and tell us all about this encounter Jim had.
Well, Jim went to high school in this little town in northeastern Wyoming. I can't remember the exact name of it. I have to pull up a map or something. But it's in the northeast corner of the state. Tiny, tiny little town. Just one of those places that nobody ever really goes to. Like, the train stopped coming and everything in the town pretty much stopped. So just like a nowhere, nothing, speck on the map type of town. He and his friends had heard about a party that was happening at a person that they went to school with was having a party at their parents' house that night. And their parents lived out on a dirt road about 20 miles out of town. So the whole area was kind of generally known as being very creepy at night. And my friend Jim didn't really want to go. But he was the only one with the car, and his friends talked him into it. So they all piled in and started driving out of town towards where this person's house was supposed to be. It got dark as they were driving, and there was just a lot of like little dirt roads that like have like no signs on them. So after they'd been driving for about an hour and hadn't found the house yet, they figured they must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. So they turned around and tried to find the road that they had taken to get back to. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the road, there was this thing. And they pulled the car to a stop about 20 feet ahead of it. He described it as like a mass of fur. It just looked like a huddle of fur, is what he said, like laying in the middle of the road. And it was huge. And all of them looked at it, and they were like, what the f*** is that? They figured, it's Wyoming. It must be roadkill or something. But who's going to get out and drag it over to the side of the road so that we can drive around it? And they were arguing about that. And then it started to move. And it stood up. It was fully illuminated in the headlights of the car. Jim said that it was about 7 feet tall. It had the body of a man, but it was completely covered with like a thick, dark fur, but like really short. But it was still like short enough that he could see like the pectoral muscles kind of like rippling underneath the fur. And he said the head was what freaked him out worse. He said it was shaped like a German shepherd with a long pointed snout and pointy like ears, and its eyes were like glowing green, I think in the headlights of the car, and it was just huge, and none of them had no idea what they were looking at first, you know. And Jim realized at that point that it was staring back at them, and it was holding a dead rabbit in its hand. And as soon as he realized that, he said, the thing looked at the rabbit in its hand, looked at the teenagers in the car in front of it, then threw the rabbit to the side and started taking a step toward the car. Well, they lost it, obviously. They just flipped the car around, got out of there as soon as they could, and just drove out of that area. They didn't end up making it to the party at night at all. And he told me that he tried to tell himself it was a bear, it was a wildcat or something, but everybody in the car was like, no, dude, that was nothing we've ever seen before. It was like a werewolf dog-man thing. I don't know. But even as he was telling me this story all these years later, I could see that, like, the hair on his arms was actually standing up, and, like, he was shaking still. It still frightened him that much. And I believe him. I'm way freaked out to go driving around that part of Wyoming at night, still, to this day.
You know, before we get into the questions here, Tara, something I want to share. I always get frustrated when people ask me or say to me that they wish so badly that they could have a dogman encounter of their own. They listen to the show, they read stories about other people's encounters, and for whatever reason they get the impression that it would be cool to maybe have one of these encounters. I always tell them, no, you don't want to have an encounter with one. And like I was telling you in the pre-interview, in most cases, then it switches at that point over to them telling me that they wish they could at least see one. They want to see a picture of a dog man. And like I told you in the pre-interview, I always tell them, no, you don't want to see a dog man, even in a picture, because there's life before you know what one of these things looks like, and then there's life after you know what one of these things looks like. Out of curiosity, you said that they thought that this big, dark subject in the road was roadkill of some kind. Was it perfectly motionless in the road, and that's why they thought that? Or if that's the case, I wonder why it was laying in the road like that without moving.
That's what I wondered, too, about the story. But he said that, yeah, they totally confused it for roadkill at first because it was just lying there. It was completely motionless. It had the dead rabbit. I don't know what it was doing with the dead rabbit, but yeah, it was just so still at first that they totally thought that it was just a dead animal of some kind. So yeah, I wondered about that too. Like, what was it doing? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to think about it too much.
Yeah, that is pretty strange. You said that Jim told you that they were about to have someone get out of the car and walk up on it. Can you imagine being the one that drew that short straw and had to be out there with it, walking up on it when it decided to come to life and stand up and turn around? That would be a bad scene.
Oh my gosh, that'd be the scariest thing I can imagine. Like, I've just heard this story secondhand, and I saw Jim's face and I saw how frightened he was still, and I can only imagine what the people in that car must have been feeling. He did make a statement to me when I asked him about it, like, well, what did it look like? And he told me that, like, it was like looking at something like that you know can't exist almost hurts your brain in a way. Like, he felt like his eyes were trying to make him see something else instead of what he was seeing in front of him. Like, no, I'm not seeing that. I can't be seeing that. Well, what is it then? And it's disturbing to your brain and like a shock to your system on multiple levels. It seems to actually experience something like this.
When Jim was telling you about this encounter, you mentioned the reaction that you noticed him having. Did he suffer from nightmares, PTSD, anything like that you know of?
Yeah, he actually did. He has some pretty serious PTSD issues, actually, and some nightmare issues. I was actually a really good guess. Or maybe not a guess, because you know a lot of people who've seen these things. He was disturbed. He wasn't a religious guy at all, but he had a cross, like a silver cross necklace, blessed, and he wore it all the time because he was worried that this thing was following him. Like, he didn't have any reason to think that. He just was worried that, like, this thing had seen him in his friends' faces, and he was worried that it somehow would always know where he was or something. I think it, honestly, like, touched on some kind of paranoia in him or something, because he was a very disturbed man. I knew him. And it all seemed to kind of stem from this incident that happened when he was in high school.
Well, after seeing something like that and living through a situation like that, I could understand him feeling that way. It's going to leave an impression on you, unfortunately. You mentioned your interest in the paranormal, Tira. Before Jim even told you about this encounter, I guess it's a safe bet that you already believed in Bigfoot and other cryptids like that?
I don't know about, believe is a really strong word. I'm definitely open-minded to all of those things, though. I do find cryptids to be completely more plausible than, say, I don't know, guardian angel stories.
My next question for you is, after having a chance to see Jim's reaction to that encounter that he had, do you have an interest in having an encounter of your own with one of these things?
No. I know that they exist, and that is so enough for me. I don't ever want to see one of these things.
You sure?
Ever. Yes. Absolutely sure.
That's wise. That's a good answer right there. Yeah, you don't want to see one. It's good that you realize that. I found out about Jim's encounter by reading a thread that you started on a website called reddit.com. Is that the only place where you posted the details of Jim's encounter, or did you post those details in other places as well?
I had also posted it on a website called Jezebel. Every year around Halloween, they have an annual Share Your True Spooky Stories with Us contest. And I had posted it there before, too. I got similar reactions from people. Most people immediately are like, werewolf! And I don't know, that's probably not a great way to describe these things. But, yeah, I've shared a couple other places on the internet, mostly with like-minded members of the paranormal community. I'm not interested in going and sharing stories with people who are just going to tell me what a liar my roommate is, what a liar I am, so.
Like I told you in the pre-interview, one of the things that is so frustrating is when I go into a forum like that where people tend to go and post their encounters where they see things like dogmen. It's so frustrating when I read a thread like that and I see all the negative posts by all the idiots that try to shoot down what these people are saying. These people go to these forums to try and find help because it would seem they don't know where else to go to get help in the first place. And then as a result, after having bared their souls to talk about these traumatic encounters that they've had with dogmen, to have these idiots make fun of them and say all the cruel things that some of them say, it's just so frustrating. It drives me crazy. Do you think that if you would have been giving the details of an encounter that you personally had had yourself compared to relaying the details that Jim had shared with you, do you think the reaction that you got in those online forums would have been any different?
I absolutely think it would have been different. Well, it would have been more personal, definitely. Because it was what I was relating secondhand. They're not really attacking me, because I'm just relating the story as I heard it. If it had been my encounter, people would have been so much more brutal. I mean, they would have been saying all those things about me. You're crazy. You misidentified this thing, whatever. So I think the fact I'm just relating a secondhand encounter sort of shields me from a lot of the criticism that the people who have these encounters must just get directly. I mean, it's no wonder that more people don't come forward because they're just mocked at every turn, you know? Like, there's really nowhere for these people to go. I mean, to have an experience like this and then to not even really be able to find a place within the paranormal community to share it with without being mocked is just, I mean, that's got to compound it so much more and just make it even more painful. And I really feel for those people.
Well, you're not alone. I feel for them too. That was the biggest reason, Tara, why I created Dogman Encounters Radio and the websites as well. As more and more time goes by, I hope more and more people like Jim find out about Dogman Encounters and reach out. Now, having said all that, after Jim told you about that encounter, did you go crazy researching the Dogman topic every chance you got, or how did you handle it?
Well, when I first heard the story, it was sort of pre-internet days, at least as we know it now. There wasn't really forums to go on or anything. sometimes you could go to chat rooms that were themed around paranormal encounters or something, but there wasn't really like the wealth of information. It wasn't really gathered yet or accessible. So I didn't really do a lot of research, but I certainly reached out to people and tried to encourage them to share their stories with me, no matter how strange they sounded. Because I think one thing that this whole thing really impressed upon me was that these people, you have to listen. Sometimes things are going to sound so crazy, but these people are telling the truth, and once you've accepted that they're telling the truth, then you really have to honestly engage with what they're saying. That these things exist, and what are we going to do about it now, basically?
That's a really good question. Really makes you wonder what the future of all this is. Will one ever be discovered and brought forth? Who knows? If I had to bet, I would say no, but time will tell. Did you ever do any digging into finding out if any other encounters had occurred in that area where Jim had his in Wyoming?
I actually did, and actually found out some really pretty interesting stuff. Around that area, there's actually a local legend about a hellhound, or at least something that people call a hellhound, that is supposed to stalk around those hills there. And that a lot of kids who were raised in that town that I actually talked to told me that their parents wouldn't allow them to play outside at night because of this thing that was supposedly stalking around in the foothills, what they call the hellhound. I wondered later if maybe the two were connected, if perhaps what people were referring to as a hellhound in the local lore was actually this thing that my friend and his friend saw that night. I think it might be connected. I think it's highly likely.
It just might be. They do go down on the four legs, and when they do, they can look a lot like what you would expect a hellhound to look, so I wouldn't be surprised. Well, Tara, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
Just that to everybody who's had a strange encounter like this, know that not everybody is going to call you a liar. There are people out here who've had the same experiences, and we're looking for you, too. So keep looking, and we'll find each other.
Really good words. Well, thanks again so much for coming on, Tara. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
Oh, thank you. Don't be a stranger, okay?
Okay, I absolutely will not.
Sounds good. Well, have a great night.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Our second guest for tonight's show is Jonathan Barber. If you'll remember, Jonathan was the guest for episode 14. John, welcome back to the show.
Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much.
John, we talked about a lot of interesting topics last time around when you came on the show, episode 14. I wanted to invite you back to talk about some other topics that we didn't have a chance to cover, and also I know that you've got some updates for us about some of the topics you did cover in episode 14. The first topic I wanted to ask you about tonight is to do with your life and how it's changed now that you know the dog men are out there.
Oh, wow. What a question. For me, I know that I can no longer really enjoy going into the woods. I love going into the woods. I love spending time having campfires, relaxing, enjoying nice long walks back bush, let alone going back there at nighttime. Just during the day, those are issues. And I love the wild. I love that stuff. And I used to spend a lot of time back there. I was actually known for going back out in the bush, and people would ask why. And I'm like, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's relaxing, it's fun. I just love that stuff. I love it a lot. And of course, once I found through interviewing people and my own experience, it's not something I can really leisurely do anymore. It's not like walking through your living room. There's something real out there, and it's not fictional. It reminds you of something fictional, but it's not. It's Dogman, and they're real, and unfortunately, potentially very dangerous. I can say, though, that before I encountered a Dogman, well, not encountered, it exactly, but I mean the experience I had with what I did back bush. Let's just say that you can really never count on when it's going to be there, when it's not going to be there. You never know. I mean, you think you're safe in some just urban-like setting, not necessarily. I mean, the reports that people have came out with, it's unnerving. I mean, when I think about this, you have to understand that I have to go back into my head and relive a few things that I've experienced. When you run into something in the woods that charges you, and you think you know what it is, it turns out to be something, and there's nothing in the world that matches this, especially where you're from. And there's only one thing it could match. It's one of a couple of things it could match. And it seems to have the brass tacks to charge you like that. There's only one thing in my mind it could have been. I'm telling you, there was only probably one thing that saved my life. And that was because I think I confused it. And I'm telling you, when you have an experience like I had, which is hard to explain to people, really hard unless you've been there, it's even difficult to talk about. I'm sitting here reliving it in my head at this moment when I'm talking about it. And I'm like, just, whoa, you know? And you never really 100% get over it. And when someone says, well, you enjoyed your life so much before by going out and having campfires and nothing happened to you, it's like, you gotta understand, they're not common, they're very rare. But when they're in an area, they're in an area. And their potential for them to be there is just a roll of the dice. I mean, sure, you probably have better odds in a casino. But the fact of the matter is, Dogman, you don't want to get double zeros.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I've spent a lot of time out in the woods myself, nighttime included. It just gives me chills wondering, with all the situations I had put myself in, way out in the middle of nowhere, daytime and at nighttime, I can't help but wonder how many times I might have been watched by one of these things. That's not to say that I was, it just makes you wonder, like you were talking about there before. I want to transition into another topic that kind of ties into this. Something that I've put a lot of thought into for quite some time now is whether or not to come out and talk about the topic of whether they do or don't attack on the show here. When I started the show, there were a lot of rules that I put in place for myself as guides on how I wanted to do things. One of the most important things to me when I did start the show was to be honest with the listeners. Having said that, I can't hide the fact that I do know of some dogman attacks that have taken place. Understand that I'm trying to be very careful with how I present this. I don't want to unnecessarily scare anyone listening to this, but I do think it's very important that people know dogmen will attack a person given a certain set of circumstances. Every indication would make it appear that it's a very, very rare circumstance when something like this would happen. But it would appear that, at least on occasion, it does happen. What's your whole take, John, on this attack topic?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I mean, I've put a lot of thought into Dogman, and if anybody really listens to Dogman Encounters, your show, and really listen to all the encounters that people have had, as well as other encounters and stories, they'll quickly see how many things match up. And these are people that are not trained. They're not socially trained to make stuff up or to even, they don't even know that much about the topic, let alone details that other people have had. And one of the things I've noticed is it's overwhelming in every case how vicious they are, how ferocious they are. These dogmen are absolute. I mean, I've done a lot of research since like 2004, before dogman was even a word that people used that I noticed. I used to have to look at werewolf, movies, and that's what I would find when I wanted to. I had to really be specific. That's how I found that one. It wasn't a post; it was a site, a native site, years ago. That's how I learned about one of the situations where the natives used to have this dog dogman sneak into their camp and kill their dogs. And when they hunted it down, it screamed like a man when they killed it. There's some stories out there that are similar to that, where they would hear very strange stuff come from these creatures, which it's hard to say. I mean, some could be misinterpreted. But the point is, how dangerous could these things be? Well, the fact of the matter is, they have shown to be violent with animals. I mean, animals that me and you would consider lovable, wonderful pets. They would kill them, no problem. I mean, sometimes they seem kind of callous and inhumane, in my opinion, and sometimes almost come across as being, in the way that they act, is a little bit, I think it's on a borderline of sadistic, but they don't really cross that for what people see. I mean, most animals, like most wolves, are not like that. People have to understand the differences between dogman and wolves are actually there's quite a lot of differences when it comes to the way they act with people. They have a lot of similarities, actually quite a lot, but the difference here socially is pretty big. And this part is, you don't hear people talk about this, like when they attack. I mean, sometimes there are researchers out there, very well-known ones you hear about all the time, who talk about dogman. And the one thing they don't talk about, they'll kind of go over it, like dogman attacks. They'll say, oh, I've heard about a few dogman attacks, they'll say. But, they talk about like it wasn't serious, or it was something that maybe it was made up. You have to understand something. How many animals on this planet do we know of that are vicious, that are very, not necessarily like heartless or just, evil or anything like that. They're just extremely ferocious and violent in the way that they act. How many of them would never hurt a human? And the answer is none of them. Bears have been known to kill and eat people. If you ever see a bear, they're afraid of people. Dogman isn't. There's hunters out there that hunt bears, and to them it's just I had a great day out. I got a bear. That's the way they think. Now, if you run into a dogman, when they run into a dogman, first of all, they stop hunting. They say it was the most ferocious, violent thing they ever seen. They thought they were gonna die. Okay, there are plenty of times where these things don't kill people, but when it comes down to anger, and these things, that's the one trait, one emotion they seem to have more than anything, is straight up anger. Anger becomes violent, and no one can say that doesn't happen. These things don't like humans, and when you take anger with I don't like, and you mix in an encounter, there's going to be violence. It'll eventually happen. If it has happened, you probably just didn't hear about it. They said it was something else. My opinion, it is very rare, like Vic says. I just don't see it actually not happening like some other researchers out there have said. And it doesn't make any sense. It's against the laws of nature. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, is to be ferocious and angry. Anger will eventually turn into violence. We know this as a society. And to say that won't happen, or that they won't attack you, kind of ridiculous. I mean, I don't think it'll happen. If you run into one, stay calm. Don't necessarily run away, because that might cause an issue unless you can feel like you can slip away. But if they want you, there's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. And that's why I say, just stay out of the woods. I mean, I say to people, don't be afraid. Just be educated. Learn about it. Understand that these things could do violence to you. I mean, I'd like to sum this up a lot quicker, but, it's one of those things that's not talked about enough out there. And because it's not talked enough about out there, someone has to get into the nitty-gritty. They have to. They have to say, hey, is it not logical something this angry, this ferocious eventually won't cross the line? Most of the time I think they just want to chase us away. But honestly, there are plenty of times where they think, you know what, I'm going to take this guy out. Or they're just going to react. And a lot of the time, anger is simply a reaction. And there must have been accidents. And I don't mean simply just an accidental incursion where you run into the back of it or something and it elbows you in the head. I'm talking about death, really, or severe injury. And this by no means could this be something that doesn't happen. I think, honestly, what it is that most people think animal attacks are probably to do with other animals, and it turns out to really be a dog man. Or, of course, there's the missing people thing. You hear about David Paulides talking about missing people. Now, if you really read his book and look into it, he clearly says that these well, it's not that what he says is that what he shows is that they can't be all to do with animals. These have to be done by something else. But these things definitely could have to do with some people that are missing, and it's not surprising whatsoever.
You know, it's not easy to come out and talk about this. It would have been so much easier to perpetuate the myth that they are a look but don't touch creature. When you listen to episodes of this show or other shows where dogman encounters are talked about, and you hear about how this ferocious looking dogman approached someone, they had them dead to rights, but when all was said and done, they didn't harm a hair on the person's head. It's easy to think that every encounter ends that way, but I'm telling you, that's not how it is. The people that go through such a traumatic experience, it's not hard to understand why they wouldn't want to come on a show like this and relive what they unfortunately had to go through with an audience. They just want some answers. They want to make some sense out of what happened, if it's possible to do that, and then move on with their lives the best way they know how.